Be honest for a second. Have you ever returned home from a vacation, dragged your luggage through the front door, dropped your bags in the hallway, and just stood there thinking, I am so utterly exhausted, I desperately need another vacation just to recover from that one?
Oh, absolutely. It's a remarkably common condition these days, honestly.
Right, like you spend 6 months planning this trip, you save up, you anticipate it, you clear your calendar, and yet you come back feeling just completely depleted.
Yeah, your suitcase might just sit there unpacked for a week.
Yes, because you physically and mentally just cannot process the fact that you have to go back to regular life.
Well, it's because we treat travel as this aggressive extraction of experiences. You technically transported your body to another geographical location,
Hmm.
but you never actually gave your mind permission to rest. You were working the entire time, just in a different setting.
That feeling is the exact catalyst for today's deep dive. Our mission today is to explore how the fundamental nature of travel has morphed.
Yeah, it really has changed.
It has. We are going to look at the mechanisms behind how a simple physical journey evolved into this high pressure, heavily optimized identity that we feel obligated to wear.
Which is exhausting just to think about.
Right. And our grounding source for this exploration is this brilliant, hot off the press essay published today, May 8, 2026. It's written by Roberta Hill on her Substack, which is called Wander After 70. And the piece is titled, When Did Travel Become an Identity Instead of a Journey?
She offers a truly vital perspective here. I mean, by writing from the vantage point of a traveler over 70, Hill provides this longitudinal view of the modern tourism landscape.
Yeah, she's seen the shift happen in real time.
Exactly. She
Yeah.
isn't just complaining about crowds. She is diagnosing a massive psychological shift in how human beings approach the very concept of movement.
Hmm.
She remembers an era where the mechanics of getting there were entirely different, which, fundamentally shaped the psychology of being there.
Okay, let's unpack this because her core premise immediately struck a chord with me. She points out that 100 years ago, or even just 50 years ago, the journey wasn't this obstacle between you and the destination.
Right. It wasn't a barrier.
Yeah, it wasn't something you just tried to get through to reach the beach or the museum. The physical movement was inextricably woven into the trip itself.
What's fascinating here is that we often assume the biggest revolution in travel over the last century has been purely technological.
Like jets and stuff.
Right. Commercial jets, high-speed rail, instantaneous global mapping on our phones. The sheer speed of transit is phenomenal. But Hill argues that the technological shift is secondary to the emotional shift.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we haven't just increased our speed, we have completely altered our emotional tolerance for transit.
Because historically, if you traveled by ship or by long-haul rail, the landscape changed gradually outside your window. You physically felt the miles passing.
You had to.
The air temperature shifted over days, not hours. And you knew going into it that you were going to be completely unreachable for weeks.
Which sounds like a dream now.
Doesn't it? Nobody could ping you for a quick decision. There was this forced rhythm to the road that mandated a certain level of boredom,
Yes.
and that boredom allowed your brain to actually transition. Like, you might stop at a village simply because the sun was going down and the horse needed rest, or the train had a layover.
You didn't stop because an algorithm mathematically determined it was the most highly rated hidden gem within a 20-mile radius.
Right. Contrast that with the psychological whiplash of today. You board a plane at JFK, fly across the Atlantic while attempting to sleep in this flying metal tube, and wake up in Rome.
And you're wrecked.
Totally wrecked.
Yeah.
Your body has crossed an ocean, but your nervous system is still pacing around your living room in New York. You never properly arrived.
No, you didn't.
Mm.
And because we feel this subconscious disconnect, we overcompensate. Well, we succumb to the modern obsession with optimization. We try to force the connection to the place by doing as much as possible.
Oh, we fall right into the optimization trap. We demand the absolute fastest route, the maximum points redemption, the most aggressively efficient layover.
Exhausting.
Listeners, think about your last major trip. Did you find yourself trying to cram the top 10 attractions of a major global capital into a 48-hour window?
I know I have.
We all do it. And Hill has this incredibly sharp observation where she says people are now treating travel like hockey statistics.
Oh, I loved that part.
Yeah, they count countries and continents like a scorecard.
And that compression fundamentally changes the definition of a vacation. It turns travel into a competitive achievement rather than a sensory experience.
Like a checklist.
Exactly. The paradox is profound here. The faster and more frictionless our physical movement across the globe became, the more emotionally rushed and anxious we started to feel while doing it.
We engineered all the waiting out of travel.
And in doing so, we engineered out the digestion period.
That dynamic is the exact equivalent of speedrunning a video game.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. If you've never seen it, speedrunning is where players try to beat a massive, complex game as fast as humanly possible. They skip all the rich dialogue. They ignore the sweeping background art. They literally glitch their character through solid walls just to reach the end credits in record time.
Just to say they did it.
Exactly. Sure, you technically beat the level, you get the achievement badge, but you completely miss the artwork, the music, and the storyline. You miss the actual game.
A brilliant way to visualize it. You're hitting the required checkpoints without absorbing the narrative context of the world you're moving through.
Yeah.
And if we look at the root cause of this behavior, Hill offers a really compelling sociological theory. People are deeply exhausted by modern life long before they even pull their suitcase out of the closet.
Oh, 100%. We exist in a baseline state of constant digital connection, endless information streams.
A barrage of competing opinions on how we should be living.
Your phone is constantly buzzing with push notifications telling you exactly where to go, what you must eat, and which specific alleyway is an absolute must-see to maximize your joy.
And the tragic irony is that these algorithmic recommendations direct millions of people to a quote-unquote hidden alleyway for authentic food. But the very second that alleyway goes viral on a platform like TikTok,
It's done.
right, it instantly ceases to be hidden. It becomes a queue of tourists. You are being rushed through a pre-optimized checklist dictated by a glowing screen.
So naturally, when the human psyche gets exhausted by this perpetual speedrunning, there's going to be a behavioral reaction, a rebellion against the rush.
Which leads us to the current trend.
Right, because if we're so exhausted by the speedrunning, you'd think the solution is just to slow down. But the hilarious and honestly slightly depressing part that Hill points out is that even our natural impulse to rebel has been heavily monetized.
Oh, completely packaged and sold back to us.
Yes. In 1920, nobody proudly announced to their dinner party that they were embracing a slow travel lifestyle. They didn't need a philosophical label. It was just called travel.
Today, slow travel isn't just an action. It is a meticulously marketed package. It comes with an entire vocabulary of slogans.
You see the targeted ads in your feed all the time?
Stay like a local, live authentically, immerse yourself deeply in the cultural fabric. The industry realized we were tired, so they sold us the concept of resting at a premium.
I have to highlight her retort to that specific marketing language because it made
Right.
me laugh out loud.
It's so good.
She writes that sometimes at her age, she simply doesn't have the emotional energy to immerse herself deeply into the cultural fabric every single day.
Fair enough.
Some afternoons, she doesn't want to uncover the raw soul of the city. She just wants a decent cup of coffee and a comfortable bench to sit on for an hour.
That is the pragmatic wisdom of the older traveler cutting straight through the performative marketing speak.
Absolutely.
But Hill doesn't stop at making fun of the slogans. She probes into the underlying mechanism of why we are so hungry for these labels. Why do we feel this intense compulsion to brand our personal travel style?
And what does she conclude?
Her conclusion is that modern individuals no longer just take trips, they join tribes.
Okay, but hold on. Let's examine that tribalism for a second. She lists out all these specific travel tribes: solo female travelers, van lifers, digital nomads, the hyper-optimizers maximizing luxury points, the over 60 communities.
Right, highly specific niches.
Isn't the internet's ability to group us into these hyper-specific niches actually a massive win for human accessibility? I mean, isn't that a good thing?
It undoubtedly is, and Hill is careful to acknowledge the genuine utility there. A 65-year-old solo female traveler stepping out into the world alone no longer has to feel like an isolated anomaly.
She has support.
Exactly. She can open a Substack newsletter or a dedicated Facebook group and instantly access a wealth of reassurance. She finds practical safety advice, logistical encouragement, and crucially, a community of shared mistakes.
Yeah, that's huge.
It is immensely comforting to read that someone else also got hopelessly lost on the subway in Prague or nearly missed their connection in Lisbon.
It strips away the panic because it normalizes the inevitable friction of the adventure.
Precisely. The utility is undeniably wonderful. But we have to look closely at the broader implication Hill pivots to. While the logistical support is great, the consequence is that travel becomes permanently fused to identity.
Meaning you're playing a part.
Right. You aren't just a human being exploring Lisbon for a week. You are performing the role of a slow-traveling digital nomad for an audience. You are upholding the aesthetics of your chosen community.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this tribal performance points to a much deeper, somewhat melancholic reality about modern society at large.
We're lonely.
Basically, yeah. We are fundamentally searching for connection in a world that feels increasingly atomized. Think about the fragmentation we live with daily. Extended families are scattered across different continents. Neighborhoods rarely function as intimate social safety nets anymore. Civic and religious attendance has plummeted over the decades. And with the explosion of remote work, we don't even have the daily physical anchor of the office cooler.
Friendships and core social interactions have migrated almost entirely to the digital realm. And because of this societal shift, travel is no longer just about the physical exploration of a new geography.
What is it then?
It is morphed into a frantic search for a sense of belonging that we are severely lacking back home. Look at the digital nomad communities. Hill masterfully deconstructs the aesthetic photos we are all familiar with.
Oh, the laptop on the beach photo.
Exactly. The sleek laptop casually positioned next to a tropical smoothie on a sun-drenched desk in Bali. Beneath that highly curated image is often a very quiet, very desperate search for real human connection.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because of this deep societal fragmentation, travelers are essentially building temporary, mobile villages out of movement itself.
It's exactly what they're doing.
Co-working spaces in Colombia or Thailand morph into surrogate social clubs. The local expat cafe replaces the corporate break room. WhatsApp group chats have literally become the new neighborhood fence where people gossip and share news.
But Hill draws a very firm, crucial distinction here that we cannot gloss over. Mobility does not equal emotional fulfillment.
Right.
Those two concepts might intersect occasionally, but they're entirely different mechanisms. You can constantly circle the globe, bouncing seamlessly from one exotic, sun-drenched co-working space to another, and still suffer from profound, crushing loneliness.
Because you aren't really there.
Right. The physical world we are traveling through is actively losing a daily battle for our attention to the digital world we carry in our pockets.
She illustrates this with a scene at a restaurant in Paris. She paints this vivid, almost cinematic image in the text. Imagine looking around a gorgeous historic bistro in Paris today. Half the room is meticulously arranging and photographing their dinner from 3 different angles.
Cold food just for the shot.
Yep.
And the other half is staring downward, mesmerized by the glow of their screens, actively checking comments and likes from people thousands of miles away.
It is a striking, tragic image of modern displacement. Everyone is so aggressively focused on documenting the trip for their digital village that they completely vacate the actual physical experience in front of them.
They aren't even tasting the food.
No, because the brain is wired for that immediate social validation. A notification from a colleague back in Chicago delivers a faster dopamine hit than the complex, slow appreciation of a beautifully crafted French sauce.
Wow.
They are geographically located in Paris, but psychologically their consciousness is living entirely inside the comment section.
Which means you are totally fundamentally disconnected from the very culture you spent thousands of dollars to supposedly immerse yourself in.
Yeah.
And this hyper-awareness of how our travel is perceived online, this constant digital auditing of our experiences, hasn't just made us lonely. It has radically transformed the metrics by which we judge ourselves and, more importantly, how we judge other people when they travel. The foundational question of tourism has shifted. 50 years ago, the only question was, where should I go to have a good time?
Right.
Today, the question a huge portion of travelers wrestle with is, am I a good person for going there?
Hence, the massive rise of ethical and ecotourism. And let's be clear, the author is not dismissing the realities of mass tourism. She points out very stark consequences. Major destinations are buckling under the sheer weight of foot traffic.
Oh, completely.
Cities like Venice and Barcelona are actively protesting because local housing has been decimated by short-term rentals. She describes specific corridors of Santorini as feeling less like functioning communities and more like human conveyor belts designed solely to process cruise ship passengers.
And Hill maintains a remarkably impartial tone when discussing these environmental and infrastructural impacts.
Which is refreshing.
It is. She acknowledges the heavy carbon footprints of international flights, the immense strain on local water supplies, and the complicated reality of the cruise ships that she herself frequently utilizes.
Yeah, she doesn't preach.
No, because these are genuinely complex, heavy questions that travelers of all ages are being forced to wrestle with. The sheer volume of modern movement, alters landscapes irreversibly.
But the problem isn't that people are asking these ethical questions. The problem is how the internet turns those complex questions into a performance.
This raises an important question, which Hill aptly names the moral theater of modern tourism. We see this deep structural irony playing out online. Travelers will loudly and very publicly declare boycotts of over-touristed areas to signal their own environmental virtue to their digital tribe.
Like a badge of honor.
Exactly. They will post lengthy threads about how they would never set foot in Venice because it's ethically compromised.
But those exact same people will then turn around and flood a completely undiscovered, fragile coastal town the very second an influencer or a Sunday travel supplement crowns it as the new authentic hotspot.
Without a second thought.
Right. They bring the exact same overwhelming infrastructural volume to a new place that isn't built to handle it, but they do it under the protective guise of being an intrepid, ethical explorer.
And we must examine the paradox of ecotourism itself, which Hill writes about with devastating clarity. There is a painful catch-22 inherent in seeking out the untouched.
Wait, let me push back on that a bit based on the text. Doesn't transforming a remote village into an eco-destination inherently corrupt it?
Yes. Let's walk through the mechanism of how this happens. Imagine a remote, mountainous village that survives on traditional farming. A few intrepid travelers discover it and praise its untouched authenticity online.
Right, they post about it.
Suddenly, the village gets an influx of tourist dollars. To keep that new, lucrative economy flowing, the village realizes they must cater to the expectations of the Western eco-tourist.
Because they realize the tourists aren't paying to see modern development. They are paying to see a pristine, frozen-in-time version of rural life.
Exactly. So the village deliberately stalls its own modernization. They stop wearing contemporary clothes and put traditional garments back on, specifically for the hours the tour buses are there.
Oh.
They perform their own past. It becomes a living museum of itself.
So they get jobs, but the village slowly loses itself by performing untouched authenticity for outsiders.
Precisely. The village fundamentally changes its economy and its daily habits to perform that authenticity, which means, by definition, the village is no longer authentically untouched. It is putting on a stage play.
That is so wild to think about.
The more aggressively Western tourists seek out pure, authentic local culture, the more those destinations are forced to manufacture and perform that authenticity to satisfy the economic demand. It corrupts the very fantasy a traveler is chasing.
But nobody wants to talk about that.
No, as Hill points out, the travel community rarely likes to discuss this mechanism honestly, because it forces us to look in the mirror at our own complicity.
This is exactly where the perspective of an older traveler acts as the perfect grounding wire for the essay. You don't live to be over 70 without developing a very thick skin for hypocrisy.
Very true.
Age brings this rugged, pragmatic wisdom that accepts the fact that real life is completely, utterly contradictory.
It is a refreshing dose of reality. She acknowledges the inherent friction of being alive right now. We desperately want to protect the environment and lower our carbon footprint.
But we also fiercely want to board a transatlantic flight to hold our newborn grandchildren.
Right. We deeply want to immerse ourselves in the gritty, authentic local culture of a bustling Asian market.
But we also incredibly appreciate retreating to a hotel with hyper-modern air conditioning after a long, humid day of walking.
Both of those things are true at the exact same time. We're profoundly contradictory creatures, and pretending otherwise is just exhausting.
It really is.
Hill's ultimate conclusion is that travel decisions are rarely, if ever, morally perfect. It's a fool's errand to try and achieve some impossible standard of ideological purity when moving through a complex global economy.
So what's the alternative?
Instead of performative purity, she advocates for quiet consciousness. It's about spending your money thoughtfully, showing genuine respect for the local infrastructure, and keeping at the forefront of your mind that actual, complex human beings live in the places you are currently using as a scenic backdrop for your vacation photos.
You cannot treat entire sovereign nations like they are your personal interactive amusement park.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? What is the takeaway for you, the listener, planning your next trip? If we take a step back and strip away all the labels we've dissected today.
The slow travel, solo travel, digital nomadism.
Right, all of it. If you strip all that aggressive marketing and exhausting identity performance away, what is left? Underneath it all, there is just a very basic, very vulnerable human longing.
A longing to feel a genuine connection to the world around us.
Yes. A desire to feel connected to physical places, connected
Uh-huh.
to a sense of meaning, and connected to our own internal thoughts before modern life got so incredibly noisy and demanding.
Well said.
I absolutely love the final, quiet image she paints of who the truly interesting travelers actually are today.
They certainly aren't the ones with the most polished personal branding
Right.
or the most viral drone footage.
Not even close. She writes that the most fascinating travelers are the older couple quietly driving secondary dirt roads for a month who haven't felt the need to post a single photograph of their meals to the internet.
And that sounds lovely.
Or the Imman who takes the exact same morning walk through a foreign neighborhood every single day for 2 weeks just so she can learn the subtle shifting rhythms of the local bakery and the stray cats.
Just observing.
Or the person who can just sit on a park bench for an hour doing absolutely nothing but paying fierce attention to the way the light hits buildings. There is no personal branding. There is no loud declaration of their ethical travel philosophy. There is just movement, endless curiosity, and deep, unrecorded attention.
Because if we look back 100 years, you didn't need a special hashtag or a marketed label for that behavior. That was simply the definition of travel. It was about quietly absorbing the experience rather than aggressively consuming the destination.
And that brings us to a final, lingering thought for you, the listener, to ponder long after this audio stops. Think back to that profound exhaustion we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive, that feeling of needing a vacation just to recover from your vacation.
We've all been there.
If the true foundational essence of travel, long before it became a packaged identity or an algorithmic checklist, was simply defined by a state of open curiosity, by the willingness to pause, and by paying deep attention to the physical world around you.
Which is something you can do anywhere.
Exactly. Could you technically embark on a profound, life-changing journey tomorrow morning without ever leaving your own hometown, simply by changing the way you look at it?